All right, today we're starting off with a question. Have you ever walked on to a used car lot and gone up to the salesman and requested to pay new car price on one of their vehicles? No, you probably haven't. So why would you do that for fantasy football? Just because somebody produced big numbers in 2019 doesn't mean they replicate those numbers in 2020. The last thing you want to do is end up with a fantasy turd on your roster that you spent an early round draft pick on. Hit the like button, because I got 3 running backs you do not want to draft in 2020. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there, because today we got a big one. This is usually one of our bigger shows of the year. We're talking about running backs that I will not draft in 2020 fantasy football. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't throw it down below in the comment section. I'm not saying these guys suck. What I'm saying is based on their current ADP and probably where their ADP is going to be, there's just too much risk involved, and I'm not going to just overbuy last year's production. I got 3 running backs we're going to be talking about today, and I'm looking forward to it. But I mentioned this is one of our bigger videos of the year, so I have a challenge for you, the viewer, for Headliner Nation. Now, last year, this video did pretty well. It had just over 169,000 views, 7,500 likes. That's almost a record for, it might be a record for us. I don't know. It was a great turnout for that video, but I want to see if we can break a record. Anybody else want to break a record out there this year? So let's go ahead and hit that like button, because if we can break this record, I'm going to give a random person in the comment section an autographed jersey. I got a few you can choose from. I'll basically almost let you pick from what I got. I got an Allen Robinson, a Brian Urlacher, a Darius Geis LSU jersey, a Devontae Adams Packers jersey. What else do I got in there? I got a James Washington Pittsburgh Steelers jersey, if you're a Steelers fan. I got a Corey Davis jersey. I know there's a lot of Corey Davis fans out there, but I got some options. So hit that like button, leave a comment down below. We break that record, I'll give somebody random an autographed jersey. Looking forward to doing that. But without taking up any more time, let's go talk about a few running backs that I will not draft in 2020 fantasy football. Listen, no one, and I mean absolutely no one, loved Aaron Jones more than we did on this channel last year. He was one of our few must-own running backs for 2019 fantasy football, and boy did he deliver. But we don't want to buy 2019 production here in 2020 without looking at some of the numbers first. Right now, Aaron Jones has a second-round ADP at running back 10 overall. But is that too expensive? A little bit too much risk? Part of the reason we liked him so much last year was because his ADP fell into the late 3rd, early 4th round in a lot of leagues. But Jones absolutely killed it last year, had 16 rushing touchdowns alone, tied for the league lead with Derrick Henry. Now, over the last 10 seasons, there have been 10 running backs that have had at least 15 plus rushing touchdowns in a season. However, none of them did it in back-to-back seasons. But I think we can all agree here, right? We can't just go into 2020 and expect 16 rushing touchdowns again for Aaron Jones. We have to admit there's probably going to be some slight touchdown regression there here in 2020. But what about his touches? Last year, he had 236 carries to Jamal Williams' 107. Now, Jamal Williams averaged right around 8 carries a game for the season, and he missed 3 games due to injury. So there's potentially 20 to 30 less carries there that Aaron Jones could see, putting him right around the 200 carry mark. Not bad, pretty average. We also know that Green Bay spent a second-round pick on running back A.J. Dillon. Don't know who A.J. Dillon is, you're asking? Well, Google him. Kid is pretty good. His college coach calls him a physical freak. At 6 foot, 247 pounds, dude is an absolute wrecking ball. This guy racked up 1,880 total yards on 331 total touches and 14 rushing touchdowns alone last season. At his size, those touchdown numbers really don't surprise me at all. And this is only going to lead to more of that touchdown regression that we talked about just a few moments ago. Now, the Green Bay coaching staff talked before the draft about wanting to have a 3-headed monster in that backfield. Well, now they have it. No idea why they have it. No idea why they wanted another running back, but thank you, head coach Matt LaFleur, for ruining a good thing. Now, I'm not out here banging the A.J. Dillon drum saying he's taking all the work from Aaron Jones. I'm not doing that at all. But could he come out and get around 75 carries for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns? Heck yeah, he could, easily. Now, Kyle outlined some crazy stats in a recent video. Aaron Jones scored on 41% of his carries in the red zone and on 58% of his carries inside the 5-yard line. Those are crazy high percentages. Now, in 2019, the Packers racked up 411 rush attempts. That was 13th most in the NFL, so that is a good thing right there. So let's look at some projections and kind of see what's left over for Aaron Jones. We have approximately 100 carries for Jamal Williams, 75 carries for A.J. Dillon, and over his career, Aaron Rodgers has averaged right around 50 carries a season himself. Yes, those count when you look at team rushing stats. That's a total of 225 carries between those 3 players. If the Packers run at a similar clip this year that they did in 2019, that leaves about 185 carries left over for Aaron Jones. Now in 2019, Jones averaged 4.6 yards per carry and a touchdown every 14.75 carries. We talked about the touchdown regression though a little bit with A.J. Dillon, so he's going to end up losing a few of those this season. That puts him right around 851 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. But what about the passing game? He had 474 receiving yards on 49 receptions in 2019. However, 159 of those yards came in just one game. So let's take out that one anomaly. Let's kind of see what he averaged, which was right around 3 receptions and 21 yards a game and 1 touchdown every 42 receptions. That figures out to be right around 48 receptions, 336 yards, and 1 touchdown through the air. So let's add it all up now. Let's see where we're at. 851 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. That's 133 fantasy points. Add in 48 receptions for 336 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. That's another 63 fantasy points. That's a total of 196 half-point PPR fantasy points, which would have made him running back 15 in 2019. So it's still not bad. Now, the difference between running back 10 and running back 15 doesn't sound that bad. But in 2019, that was a difference of 25 fantasy points. I don't know about you, but I would like to have those extra 25 points. That's actually a 13% increase that he would need. Add in the fact that Green Bay has 10 games in 2020 against above average run defenses and a lack of weapons on the outside. We could get used to seeing stacked boxes for Aaron Jones and double teams all over Davante Adams. To me, it's just a little bit too risky at that point in the draft. Anyway, you got the likes of Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders even. They're all being drafted after him. And in my opinion, I would feel a little bit safer with all of those other guys. Not taking anything away from Aaron Jones, but the addition of A.J. Dillon means something. And if he loses a lot of those touchdowns and a few of those carries, he could see a pretty good regression there. Now, I'm not going to say the guy's going to suck. And if he falls in your fantasy draft later than the second round, if he falls to the third, the fourth again, all of a sudden, he becomes a value. I just don't know if that's going to happen in time for your fantasy football drafts. It's something to pay attention to. But right now, I'm not drafting Aaron Jones in 2020. Next up, this is going to get more people fired up. What about rookie running back Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE of the Kansas City Chiefs? So I'm pretty sure this is not going to be a popular one with the people, but let me be clear here. This has to do with ADP all the way. Right now, he has a late second, early third round ADP and is currently running back 14. That really worries me. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the talent. I love the landing spot. If you watched the live show during the NFL draft, you saw my reaction when the Chiefs drafted Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE. It involved many fist pumps and some Ric Flair whoos. So why was I so happy then, but now I'm not? Well, it's really simple. It's the price. It's just too high. I fully expect Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE to be the man in Kansas City by week 8. The problem is the first 7 weeks and how much of a split will we actually see? Had this been a normal offseason, maybe I don't worry about it so much. But in a year like this, in such a screwed up NFL offseason due to the Rona, a rookie really scares me this early. Now, Damian Williams has done just fine in this offense when he's healthy. The problem is the healthy part. Last year was a career high in carries for him with only 111. Do we see a Damian Williams, Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE split to start the year, acclimate the rookie into the offense, kind of ease him in, and then prepare to release him second half of the season and make a run? To me, That seems highly likely. Listen, if his ADP is in the 4th round, I may risk it. But in the 2nd, the 3rd, no. That's just too many people out here in the fantasy football industry overhyping this guy to the point that his ADP has gotten too expensive. Kansas City only ran the ball 375 times in 2019. That makes a lot of sense, though, when you have the likes of a Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. We've mentioned Mecole Hardman before, and you got Patrick Mahomes under center. It's to be expected. In fact, in the last 3 seasons, Andy Reid's teams haven't finished higher than 23rd overall in the league in rush attempts for a season. Kansas City always gets their opponent's best shot, and more times than not, it forces them to have to throw the ball all 4 quarters. Luckily, Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE was arguably the best pass-catching running back in college last year, where he had 55 receptions, 453 yards in 15 college games. He's not really a burner like Damian Williams, which really may limit his big plays, forcing him to be a little bit more reliant on volume. But how involved does he need to be to return on that running back 14 investment that you have to get on draft day? Last year, the running back 14 scored 203 half-point PPR fantasy points. In order for Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE to get there, he needs right around 900 rushing yards, 50 receptions, 400 yards receiving, and 8 total touchdowns. Can he get that? I actually think he might. But remember, this video is about running backs to not draft. In my opinion, Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE is someone that I want another owner to pay that premium price on, and then I can swoop in 4 or 5 weeks into the season and try to acquire him on the cheap if he struggles out the gates. It's like buying a brand new car off the lot. That initial buyer takes the huge hit on the value. Then after a year, they can't afford it, don't like it anymore, they trade it in, and then the next person swoops in, gets themselves basically a new car, and doesn't have to worry about the inflated price. That's kind of what I want to do with Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE. Look at the schedule he faces to start the year. Houston, LA Chargers, Ravens, Patriots, Raiders, Bills, Broncos. That's at least 5 to 6 really tough teams to run on, much less they have solid offenses. You may be able to come in a few weeks into the season, make a pretty sweet 2-for-1 deal, and land Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE just as he's about to take over, take that role, and take off second half of the season. Is it a risk to fade him on draft day? It is. But look at some of the backs that are being drafted around him. Miles Sanders, Austin Eckler, Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette. All of them, they have huge upside too and pretty defined roles at this point. So it's not like Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE is the only good running back around this ADP. Now, don't let on your love for him at all in your league. Let someone overpay on draft day. Wait patiently. If a couple bad games happen to start the year, head in there, try to ease the panic owner, make a solid offer, and land yourself Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE for a great second half of the season. You never know. That move could be enough to win your league. In my opinion, I'm not going to draft Clyde Edwards-HELAIRE, but I'll be watching the first few weeks to see if I can get him on the cheap. Last guy we're talking about kind of pains my heart to say because I'm a huge fan. It's Chris Carson, running back of the Seattle Seahawks. I got to admit it, though. I don't like it. I don't like that I have to say Chris Carson. This one is tough, but to me, it's all about the fractured hip he suffered week 16 at the end of 2019. And I hate to keep bringing up how crazy this offseason is, but has he been able to get the level of rehab he would have without the Rona? Possibly, and I'm sure he got top-level care, but we just don't know. We're not seeing it. We're not seeing him running. We're not seeing drills. We're not seeing anything at all of Chris Carson. It just adds more questions. Chris Carson, he's obviously the favorite of Coach Pete Carroll. I don't know if he's got incriminating pictures or something, but we know Coach Carroll loves him some Chris Carson. And they're saying all the right things, that Carson should be good to go by week 1 in 2020. However, their actions, they speak a little bit differently. Now, we don't expect much of anything from Rashad Penny after a torn ACL last year. They drafted Travis Homer last year, and he got very limited work, but showed promise at times. Then they went out and they drafted DJ Dallas and signed and brought in Carlos Hyde. Now, our very own headliner doc, Ethan Turner, has come out and said that Chris Carson is a huge risk in 2020 due to the unknown of that hip injury, and he himself would avoid Chris Carson unless he could get him at a ridiculously cheap price right around round 6 or 7 or so. With the severity of this injury really unknown and the actions of the team in the offseason, it just really leads him to believe that it may be a little bit worse than expected. Now, right now, he's going in the late 3rd rounds of drafts, which honestly isn't horrible for somebody of his production, especially on a team that runs as much as Seattle does. Last year, they had 481 rush attempts, third most in the NFL, and Carson has had at least 1,300 total yards and 9 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. But it's a hip injury to a running back, and the last time I checked, he gets hit or lands on his hip almost every single time he touches the ball, and to me, that just adds to the risk. Now, we do a lot of videos on safety around here, right? Being safe in the early rounds. And in my opinion, there's just a lot of questions surrounding Chris Carson, maybe even too many for me. Now, add into the fact that they have one of the toughest strength of schedules for all running backs in a very tough division. I mean, they got to face the 49ers a few times, the Rams a few times, the run defense of the Cardinals could be improved. A lot of difficult matchups this year for the Seattle Seahawks. And really, we expect that passing game to take a few strides forward here this year with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They also brought in, Greg Olsen. They got Will Dissly more than likely going to be able to go. I mean, maybe it's crazy, but I would actually prefer, as of right now, Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Mark Ingram, all more than Chris Carson, and they're all being drafted after him right now. Now, is it possible he ends up fine by week 1? It is. But unless I see him on the field, participating in drills, full contact drills prior to my fantasy football draft, I will not be drafting Chris Carson here in 2020 fantasy football. I love the production. I love the story. I love the opportunity that he could have. But until I can prove the health, I'm just not that interested in a running back coming off of a fractured hip in 2020. So those are 3 running backs that I will not be drafting here in 2020 fantasy football. It's all about value and risk, right? I mean, some of these guys may be just a little bit too expensive, maybe just a little bit too much risk for your liking that early during your fantasy football drafts. But we're going to continue to do these deep dives, right? We talk about this all the time. I could sit up here, list 3 names. I just don't like the guy this year. We're trying to provide facts and information so that you, the team owner, have a little bit of information to go off of so you can make the decisions for your team during your fantasy football draft. We're not sitting here and telling you to do anything. We're just trying to supply the information. That's what this channel is all about. We greatly appreciate that support. If you're into this deep diving material, head over to our website, thefantasyheadliners.com. Our draft guide is available for sale over there. It's about to drop, and it is jam-packed full of all things fantasy football here for 2020. Looking forward to it. Make sure you hit that like button, right? We're trying to break a record. We're trying to give away a jersey of your choice. I gave you the list earlier. Hit that like button. Leave that comment down below. Looking forward to that. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later.